Welcome, everyone, to Healthcare Leadership Live. I am your host, Mike Lyons, an HR services provider focused on healthcare, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you joining us here today. Whether you're tuning in on the podcast on your morning commute or joining us live here on LinkedIn, you're in the right place if you're interested in actionable tips to help you be a better leader in healthcare. And I like to have guests on that can help us learn more about being a better leader and having better workplaces. And today's guest is no exception. Lindsey Werner is a relational coach and a friend of mine here in Austin, Texas, that I wanted to have here on the show because she has so much knowledge to share about how leaders and workplaces can relate better to each other. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I want to say, if you are watching us here live on LinkedIn, you can comment on the LinkedIn page and we will see your comments and questions and we will address them here live. Lindsey would love to talk with you. And if you have questions about working together better or relating, and shoot, maybe even at home with your spouse, possibly she could help you out with that. I think she can. Because you know what? A lot of that stuff is similar.
Yep.
So maybe
I say you go with yourself everywhere you go. So
that's
at
right.
home or at work, we're always going to be talking about it.
Exactly. Cool. So Lindsey, welcome. And again, y'all share a comment. We'll address it right here. Lindsey, yeah, welcome to the show. Tell us about you and what you do and why do you do this crazy stuff called relational coaching?
I do love relationships, honestly. I think they're the most important things to us. At the end of people's lives, the regrets that they have are not financial, they're not career, they're mostly, I wish these relationships went better. And so I feel so honored to work with people in the most amazing space and the things that matter to them the most. And so I've always loved relationships and wanting to foster healthy relationships in my own life. And I became a licensed professional counselor about 15 years ago and got to work with families and individuals for a long time and really loved that work. But I started noticing businesses and executives and leaders were needing the same tools that these families were needing and just a different context in a different space. And a lot of people, if they really hated their work environment, it really impacted them as a person at home. And so I'm like, I want to expand beyond just the home and the home front and go into the workspace with people and help them grow in their leadership and not carry so much of a burden on themselves so they can be better at home and they can be better at work. So that's kind of how I got into coaching. And I've been doing that for about 5 years now.
Well, you are speaking my language, and we're definitely birds of a feather because I believe that that's what HR is also here to help do. HR has a little bit of a technical, legal aspect to it, but what got me into this work is very similar. I love helping people be their best at work, and so I love that you really focus on that. That's the
Mhm.
thing that you do. So you go really deep on that, and so I'm curious, people may think, okay, relationships, that sounds kind of soft and squishy. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't sound like a work thing. We're here to get stuff done. So, tell me a little bit more about, how that comes into play at work and where you see skill gaps, maybe.
Absolutely. That's a conversation I get to have with leaders all the time. Like, why do I need to be so concerned about this part? And so, as a leader, and I was an executive at an organization myself, and so I kind of understand a bit of the pressures and a bit of how you lead impacts the rest of the system. So,
Mm,
how you choose to foster those relationships actually communicates priority and how we work together for the rest of the organization. Much like a parent child or parents kind of resemble that for the kids. Like, this is how we fight, this is how we argue, this is how we work together. Same in a business setting. And so what my biggest thing that I tell people is, if you don't have it for yourself, you can't give that to other people. So you can't give to other people what you don't have for yourself. So if you're asking people to be on the front lines of your team relationally engage with clients. If you're asking them to know how to have hard conversations and in a productive, effective way, then you yourself need to be able to model and exhibit those behaviors to get that going for your team. And it generates a more positive culture when we actually can relate and connect as humans versus as productivity, productivity, productivity. We're going to burn out real fast, and you'll have a real resentment team going on, a real culture vibe going on because of how we work together, and how we work together really matters.
Yeah, and I believe that that's going to affect financial results too, right? I mean,
Mhm.
wow, how obvious is that? But probably not thought about enough.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of a like, seriously, Lens, like that's going to actually make us work better. Don't we need strategy? And I'm like, yes, you do need strategy. But 90% of the time that I go into an organization and talk to them, I'm like, you don't have a strategy problem. You're not unaware of what you want to do or where you want to go. You just don't know how to get everybody on the same page and align it towards that goal together. And that's the relational side.
Mm. I kind of think of it like a car going down the road, and maybe you have a clear path ahead of you, right? And maybe
Mhm.
there's plenty of gas in the car to make it go, but is there oil in the car, right? Do you
Right.
have transmission fluid? And if you don't, that's like the relationships. They're not getting along, and like you're getting
Right.
heat, you're grinding and stuff. Like everybody knows, hopefully, your car ain't gonna keep working very long if you don't have that.
Right. And there's a lot of unresolved tension or even conflict that can keep teams really stuck and spinning their wheels on that emotional energy of the
Mm,
conflict instead of the fun work you get to do. Like, this is why we wanted to do the job, was to do the work, but we're being so taxed by the emotional intensity. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, at home, like, if you're at home and you're not getting along with your spouse, like, it's so emotionally taxing, and you're
mm.
constantly trying to wheel and deal and fix and change, and nothing's working. And that's where the focus goes, is on the problem and on the conflict, and then the whole vision goes out the window, right?
I mean, I'll give you an example. I always use my wife as an example, but
Does she know
she
about that, Mike? Does she know you're using her as an example?
between us, okay.
Okay.
Sometimes things, and we all our spouses come to us and they tell us about the frustrations they have at work or the little conflicts, and you can see how it's affecting them and hence
Yeah.
how it's affecting the ability to have good communication. And you're like, man, this is probably happening all over the place, and there's all this wasted energy because relationships aren't working well.
That's true. It's so true. And there's really not, that's why I love to do what I do, is because it feels far more like I'm trying to just educate you on some things that feel really hard to put into words, but we all know what we're saying. We're like, well, how do I have an effective conversation? Like, and you start to name things that feel hidden, and all of a sudden you're like, I actually can do this. I think I can do this in a more productive way. So I feel like that educational piece isn't something that we're all taught, or we're not all a part of families that really communicate well. I mean, how many of us had an awesome like, there's not a
Right.
class we take to like know how to relate in a productive way. And some of us are exceptionally good at it, even without having a good amount of experience internally in our family system about it. But it's usually not just an innate skill, like you're just born with it. It's usually a learned skill that you learn to have that, and I would call it finesse. You learn to have that relational finesse with people.
I could not agree more, right? Anyway, I could get into my whole family background and stuff, but we have to learn, better skills than maybe what we saw growing up. And so maybe let's get into a tip or two, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, do you have a tip that you would share? Like, let's say there's someone out there watching or listening and they have a work, maybe it's not a major thing, but maybe it's just like a little bit of a conflict with a coworker,
Mhm.
and they're having a tough time communicating. Like, maybe what's one or two things that you typically suggest to people at work to improve a relationship that's maybe getting off course?
That's a great question, and one I deal with all the time. First of all, so normal. So whoever you are, wherever you are, this is a question we all tend to ask at some point in time. Even I ask this question, and I'm a relational coach. So it's just a way relationships are, is they get sticky and they get tricky. And so that's just a normal thing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, so if you could learn to turn confrontations into conversations, it will help take the intensity sales, like the wind out of that sail. So it's not so intense. It's not so much of a big deal that we have to confront and get this issue resolved. Give it a little bit of space and start with curiosity, which sounds so simple, sounds so silly, but it is the most unused relational skill in the book. The most unused. So if you can get curious and start wondering and asking questions about why someone's doing something or how they perceive things, you are going to learn so much, because your brain is designed to infer and predict based off of a perception, which is not accurate a lot of the time. So if we will pause and ask those curious questions, you can turn that confrontation, like that, oh, it's going to be angsty, it's going to be intense. You can turn it into a more natural, like relational, like let's figure, like what are we even fighting about? What are we even talking about before we just start fighting? Where, like, let's get some clarity around that. So that's one relational tool, turning confrontations into conversations by using curious questions.
Mm. I love that idea of curiosity. I have found that that is a good diffusing technique, right? Let's diffuse the tension. Let me get
Yeah.
curious. And, from an authentic place, right? Like, I
Mhm.
really want to know, as opposed to, why did you do that? Like, and
Yeah.
tone matters too,
Yeah,
right?
tone matters. Yeah. Accusing people, sadly, does not actually produce good relational results.
Right?
But actually, because you don't want to know them. That's not your heartbeat.
Mm,
You're just trying to protect yourself or protect the business or protect whatever. And when we have a fight flight response, that is what's being communicated, not our love or respect or mutual,
yeah.
commitment to cooperate together. That's not being communicated. It's just fear and anxiety, and it's contagious.
I'm picturing founders or maybe doctors that own a medical practice that are
Mhm.
in conflict and needing help to kind of navigate through that. And I'm picturing that you would be immensely useful
Mm.
in that kind of scenario. Is
Yeah.
that is that something that you are is that something that you help with leaders who are in conflict?
I This gonna sound super weird, but I sure do love some conflict resolution. I do. I don't know why I'm built for it. So I have a unique desire, I think, for people to find that middle ground together. And I want everybody to figure out a way to be heard in a helpful way. Like, how do you communicate your opinions, your thoughts, your cares, your concerns in a productive way? And that's what I get to do with a lot of mediation. I've worked with
Hmm.
mediation for huge businesses where like a lot's on the line. A lot's on the line. And so that's why we get so tripped up, is because we care so much about the outcome.
Mm.
But sometimes we need to take a bit of a step back and try to communicate that without all that intensity. And there in the middle is the solution. So I love helping people find that, families or workplaces. I love helping people find that.
Well, that God bless you, because those are tough situations to step into, but sometimes you need an outsider to kind of help mediate,
It
right?
does help. I'm not taking it personal. I don't care really. It's not about winning or losing or someone's better than the other person. It's
Mm.
just there really is a cooperation there when people put their defenses down and allow a cooperation or a collaboration to exist. Because most of the time with that conflict, we're fighting over something. And sometimes it's pride. Like, I want you to think I know the answers and I will fight to be right, just to be right for my pride. And I'm not willing to back down and hear someone else's point of view because of fear of looking like whatever, not a good enough leader or whatever. So once you help people go, I think you might, like, what are you preserving? Like, what are you trying to protect?
Mm,
And then once you start to lay that down and go, that's actually not what you really want anyway. Like, you want outcomes
yeah.
better for the patient. Like, the patient is who matters. So how can we help the patient? Like, we're on the same team. How can we help this patient? How can we
Yeah.
help this client? How can we help whatever?
Yeah, and I love that, we're on the same team. That's a technique that I've utilized in the
Mhm.
HR world, is that positive intent. We both have the same goal here, you
Yep.
know.
That works in marriages too. Like, we're on the same team. We might be seeing things from a completely different vantage point, but it really does help to remember at this current point in time, we are committed to being partners together. We're on the same team.
Mm, yeah, I love that. And we talked about how this stuff helps at home, and so I think
Mm,
it completely does. I wanted to kind of go back to something you mentioned, because you
sure.
talked about taking care of yourself, it sounded like. So working on
Mhm.
yourself, taking care of yourself. Um, what are ways that we can take care of ourselves so that we show up to work as our best selves, so we don't bring that need for pride or need to
Mhm.
win or whatever, or those emotions,
Yeah, there's so many good things I can think of at the moment. I think there is a push in a good way for self-care,
Mm,
self-care in general, where people are like, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? How are you exercising? All of those things really do matter. So those would be like the normal, natural things you want to check off the list of going, am I taking, like, physically taking care of myself so that I am getting enough sleep? People don't show up to work well when they're not sleeping. Like, you're just not going to. You're not going to be your best self if you're not taking care of those basic needs of yourself. And also a tuning into, what am I really thinking about? That's also a skill we don't really do. Like, do I feel insecure? Do I feel upset? That's okay. Feelings come and go, like, like a passing on a billboard on the side of the road. They come and go throughout the day. And we tend to be kind of afraid to look at them because we just don't want them. But the more we dismiss them, the bigger they get. They
oh
get so much.
no.
So if you look at them, they actually start becoming less scary. Actually, it seems so counterintuitive, but they do. So on a basic scale, like just super, super basic, those would be the things I'd say, check all those little boxes, health and wellness,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
then the biggest tool that I could offer when I get my mind kind of wrapped around something, I can't let it go. I'm really just thinking about it. The question that I ask that tends to help me out a lot is to say, what do I think my role is in this situation?
Ooh.
And I find a wealth of information about myself. Take me as a mom. If I'm super upset or I'm worried about my child or whatever in this situation, I go, what do I think my role is? And most of the time, I think it's my job to fix whatever problem that is. And then I go, I actually can't fix that. That's up to my kid to fix. I can support, and so all this intensity kind of gets put in the right perspective. And then I'm like, oh, so my kid needs me to be a mom. They don't need me to be fixing. That's
Mm.
great. I can do that. So it starts to put things into perspective of what I'm expecting of myself and how I'm showing up oftentimes is out of that misperception of what I expect myself to be. What's my role? What is my role?
I love that. And, managers get into that too,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
I love the correlations between family and
It's
work.
everywhere. It's everywhere.
Managers will think, "Oh, I've got to do this, or I've got to jump in," but really, we've got to get better at delegating, right? We've got to get
Right.
better at training and onboarding and creating clear expectations and supporting
Yep.
and not doing, because that's a path to burnout. If I'm trying to
Absolutely.
be the manager and do your job and pick up the pieces here and
Yes.
there, right?
It is, but it is so this is why my job exists, because that is so much harder to do and takes more time to do it the right way. Because it's easier when you're hustling and bustling in a work environment to say, okay, I'll just do it. I'll just do it.
Yep.
And we don't delegate because it will take relational time, clear expectations. It takes development. It takes some more than just doing it myself. But when we do it just ourselves like that, we will burn out over time. Or we get kind of passive with other people and we're not clear and we're like, oh, just like do better at that. Just like, but be better. And the employees going like, what? Like, yesterday you said I was great. Today you said do better. I don't even like what? Who are like,
Mhm.
what's the expectation? So it has to be a good balance of communication at the center for people to be clear about what you do expect out of them, and how they're going to get there is maybe a little bit up to you, but mostly up to them. Like, here's what I need you to do. And that's the hard part with leadership, is when we do put that expectation in, sometimes people aren't the right people for the role. And that's another, like, down the line, those are continued hard conversations. Is we did train, we did equip, we did have good conversations, but we have not the right person in the right spot. And that's a different thing.
That's where HR can step in there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
With some relational
Let's do a
guide.
DISC assessment on that. See
Yeah,
see what your gifts really are,
yeah,
employee.
and
Yeah.
I actually want to talk about DISC, and personality,
Yeah.
because sometimes a manager will bring, or even a family member, because we're talking about all of this stuff, right? Will bring dominant energy, right? Like, you need
Yeah.
to do that, and
Mhm.
some people will bring passive energy, and so we have different tendencies. How have you seen that kind of affect the dynamic, and how can people try to offset those tendencies to go overboard, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's the self-awareness piece. My observation is those who tend to be more controlling and micromanaging, they have a harder time seeing the impact of that because they are not able to receive feedback very well
Mm,
or take a little look at themselves. With the right people, they will, but they have a hard time taking cues from employees that they're off course in their own leadership because they just think they're right.
mm,
Like, you just need to do what I'm saying to do.
right.
So it usually just takes an outside perspective, and then they're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm totally doing that." And once you talk to them for a minute, you're like understanding both the passive and the aggressive side of leadership, they have costs to them for you personally. There's a lot of emotional burden that you're putting on yourself that you may not be aware of. You may not be checking in with yourself on. Um, so that has been the biggest thing, and probably the biggest hindrance I have of working with people is their acknowledgement that they could grow in that area. And
Mm.
if they can't acknowledge that, then they're never going to call me to come help.
Yeah, you gotta have that growth mindset and believing
Yeah.
that you can change and
Mhm.
want to change, right? It's hard to make someone change on this stuff if they don't really want to.
Yeah, or not aware, it's not always a hardened heart type of thing. It's a lot of times, and still even with prideful, like, they really are not aware of the impact or the weight of anxiety that they're leaving in the system and how much harder they're making work for everybody else.
Mm,
They just don't see it
yeah.
until you start kind of helping them understand from a different point of view. And they are honestly my favorite clients ever to work with, because they are so hard-headed at the beginning, but they are so motivated
Mm,
and they take feedback like that. Once they see it, oh, and they fix it. And that's the one beautiful thing about the relational stuff, is oftentimes when you can just observe it in one space, you start to notice it across the board. So you're fixing one issue, but you're fixing it across all these areas. And that's really, really helpful.
Just want to say, because we are live on LinkedIn, again, if anyone has a comment, you can throw a comment into the LinkedIn comments area and we will take your question or comment. If you just want to let me know that you like my hat or, whatever, we'll take that as well. I am a believer that sometimes humans can have that negativity bias
Mm-hmm.
and we bring that into work or relationships. And it's like, I know for me, I've seen it in myself. I have to continually combat the negative thoughts and the tendency to
Mm-hmm.
kind of focus on that. Do you believe that? And are there ways that you coach people to overcome that?
Yes.
Asking for a friend here.
Just for a random
Somebody,
guy on
somebody.
the street, not you. I got it. Yeah. Okay. So the good news, Mike, is you are human. And the good news is, I know. The good news is all of us deal with that. You're actually, whoever you are listening, if you struggle with negative thinking, being negative in any way, I want you to know, no blame, no shame. Your brain is actually built that way. So your brain is designed to protect you first with that fight flight response. And so that part of your brain is actually scanning at least 30 times a second to see if you're safe. So
Mm,
you're up against a hardwired system that's designed to protect and defend first. And then once it's relaxed, and only once it's relaxed, can you move into more higher operational thinking and systems or positive thinking, right? So it's naturally going to perceive the worst. A guy named Rick Henson called it Velcro to negativity and like Teflon to positivity. That is our negativity bias. So, yes, I work with people all the time, and I find neuroscience to be the most normalizing human thing I have ever learned. It's like,
yeah.
oh, that makes a lot of sense of why that's so hard for us all to do that. And we all struggle. We all do.
Well, I appreciate you confirming my negativity bias and validating me on that.
Yeah.
And like you just said, it's very I don't remember the word you used, but it's confirming, it's validating and normalizing, I think, because it makes you realize that you're normal. We all just want to be
Normal.
loved and accepted. And just as an example, I'm going to put up here, Lisa Blanton commented, "Hi. Thank you for
Hi.
validating me, Lisa. I so appreciate that. Lisa's a wonderful friend here in the Austin area. And thanks for watching and listening, Lisa." But yeah, the negativity bias is a big thing. I've been getting into affirmations lately, and
Yeah.
I had a friend who suggested listening to a recording of affirmations, and I went a step further and I wrote some that
Nice.
I felt particular to me, and then I recorded them over this like soft, like Reiki massage kind
Yeah.
of music, and like I listened to it, and like I had the best day ever yesterday when I did that. Are you a fan of affirmations, or is it just kind of like hokum, like corny stuff?
No. Okay. So can I explain the neuroscience of
I
that
would
real
love
quick?
it.
Can we get all geeky for a second? So the neuroscience of that is your brain is hardwired in the back part of your brain for negativity, right? It's created and called a neuropathway. It's just the normal way it goes in your brain. So to create a new way of thinking, you have to create a new neuropathway, which is a new behavior, a mantra, an affirmation, some sort of behavior that starts to move your brain in a different direction. And
Mm,
they say in 30 days, you can get a new neuro channel going that is actually really effective and really powerful. So it's not so hard to do it. Have you tried to change and like it's like so hard the first couple of times? Like I don't know why it's so hard to go for a run right now, but I just can't do it. I feel like I'm a million pounds and I just can't do it.
Mm.
It's so hard to take those first steps of change because of your neurochemistry. You're fighting up against that. So when you find these positive channels to start changing those pathways, you literally start changing your brain. You literally start changing your neurochemistry, which leads to lasting change. So that's a very awesome thing you're doing. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Keep it
And
up.
Lisa commented again. I think she was talking about my
Yeah.
affirmations here,
Yeah.
and I'm actually developing. I would like to share these recordings with my HR consulting community, and I'm calling them affirmations for HR consultants. So,
Very good.
Lisa, you can expect me to share that hopefully on Spotify or maybe through the podcast here soon. And so I'm a big fan of that stuff. So thank you for
Yeah.
validating my strategy there. Um, we talked a little bit. So this show is about healthcare leadership,
Mhm.
and wanted to kind of shift gears slightly a little bit. One of the things that you shared when I heard you speak was about your family had a
Mhm.
healthcare journey,
Yeah.
and I was just curious about because I think a lot of times in healthcare, we don't always think about the patient perspective
Yeah.
and what that's like. I'm curious, what did you learn as being a family member of a patient going, and you can share whatever you are comfortable with here, but what was it like going through healthcare as a patient and that experience? And I don't know, what did you take away from it? And maybe what do you think healthcare leaders could learn about that experience?
Yes. I will start with saying I could not be more grateful for the healthcare team that we had. And I've learned how fortunate I am and our family is to have had this particular team because sadly, it's not the norm. And sadly, it's not what other people experience. And just to give you a little insight, my son is now 5 years old and he is doing wonderful. He had leukemia at 18 months old. And just to give you a glimpse of the intensity of that healthcare challenge, obviously, cancer is kind of a life or death situation. So the intensity is high. But with leukemia treatment, it's a 2.5 year treatment journey just by itself. So it was not a short stint. It was something that we really that are really we're going to be traveling with people for a long time, and we still travel with them. And I think we're going to travel with them for life, is what I hear. I don't know, but I don't ever want to give up our care team.
Mm,
And I will tell you, the way that they encountered me as a mom and my husband as the dad and my son and even my older daughter, like it was like we were seen as a unit and we are pulled into a different healthcare family that I really trusted. And if you are going to take care of my son, as a mom, you better prove that you can take care of him. Like, I'm not going to give my son over to anybody.
mm,
And so that is something, if you're a healthcare employee or a person working in a pediatric realm, attending to those parents and being a resource so we can do what we need to do to save our kids' lives. Like, you want to save their life too, but
mm,
you've got to get us on your team. And I feel like that's what Dr. Mitchell and his team at Dell's Children's and the Mueller and the old Dell's Children's did a phenomenal job. Like, every time I called with anything, they're call with anything. And I was like, okay. And
mm,
I was like, let's test this out. Is this a question I should ask? And every time I called, they said, Lindsey, excellent question. Literally every time I called with anything. So glad you called. Excellent question. Because they knew that I didn't know what to do. I
mm,
didn't know. And they actually had the answers. And our doctor would physically get on the call, or our team would call within an hour to answer a question. Like, they were so timely and treated everything like it was a priority. Like, and we were his priority. I thought we were his only patient there for a minute, but I know we weren't. So anyway, I would just say those are just some things. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of rabbit trailing and just
That's
saying
okay. Yeah.
kind of random things, but I could not be more grateful for them.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because it's a very personal thing. And you learn a lot about yourself and the
Mhm.
healthcare system going through that. And you touched on some really important things, and you touched on empathy
Yep.
and the importance of service, customer service, right? And being there, and education, and being willing to educate your patients so they know. One of the things that I would teach our staff on and I teach on in a healthcare environment is
Yeah.
explain what's going on. And a lot of times, shoot, we don't want to be at the doctor's office,
Yeah.
and so we don't know what we don't want to know. We wish we didn't have to know. And so please explain what's happening. And it sounds like that made a big difference in your journey.
Huge, huge difference. Huge difference. Yeah. I mean, I think uh, I actually remember Dr. Mitchell blatantly telling us, he's like, do not Google anything.
Yeah. That can be scary.
You
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever gotten any ailment, like a rash and and gone to Doctor Google and then like you have cancer according to
Yeah.
Doctor Google.
It's
Did you
definitely.
Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, we got a little bit,
Okay.
yeah, Doctor Google
He's
will take
scary,
you down a
Doctor
bad
Google.
road, man.
He's so scary. And I found that to be such a wise thing to do. He's like, here's the reputable sites to go to if you ever want, but always ask me questions. And there's a concept in relational realm that I use called congruence. Your
Mm,
action story and your verbal story match up, so you're believable. So what I do and what I say are the same thing. Dr. Mitchell said, I will answer any of your questions. Always ask me your questions. He always answered my question very quickly, very timely, and
yeah.
thought of it was like, that's a great question. So he showed up the way he told me to show up and that he would show up. So he built trust very quickly. And so more than likely, I bet a lot of doctors are trying to convince their patients like you have a sincere issue. Like this is the issue. Please trust me
Mm.
and the medical team to take care of you. But building that trust and getting that trust is such a huge part at the beginning stages of those relationships so that you actually can give them the care that you believe that they need.
So that's a great kind of topic that ties together what we've been talking about, right? So, like, in healthcare, we have to develop, trust and relationships
Mhm.
right from the jump,
Yep.
right? And it means a big deal to the patient experience because they could go somewhere else, right? Like you said, like I want to
Mhm.
be able to trust you, and I'm going to go somewhere else if I don't. And so, if I'm a healthcare leader or healthcare worker, how can I leverage some of the knowledge, that you've been sharing to develop trust with a new patient right away? Maybe it's a high vulnerability disease or symptoms, right? It's scary. So how can I develop trust,
Yeah.
at the jump?
I would say it starts with presence, which is the way you show up. If you show up like you know everything and that I'm the big doctor here,
Mm,
respect what I say, I don't trust you.
mm.
You are haughty, you are arrogant, and you don't care about me. I'm going somewhere else. So the way you show up to deliver that information is the biggest factor that gives people trust or not. And if you show up real like timidly, like, well, like it could be that then it looks like you don't know anything.
Mm.
And then I've been put in that situation where I've seen nurses, I'm like, you've never done this before. Like, I know you've never
Yeah.
done this before by the way you're showing up. And no, don't stick a needle in my son's chest to access his port because you've never done this before. But you're trying to prove to me that you have with your words. That's the incongruence. Your action story and your verbal story are not matching up. And so we detect incongruence like that. Ask any kid, and they will be able to tell you that person's incongruent, that person's incongruent. We detect it really easily. So it's really a humble confidence and a calm presence that builds that unique trust very quickly from the beginning. There's no shame involved, there's no pride involved. Here are the factors and an empathetic delivery of the news. Like the first day we met Dr. Mitchell, he was telling us my son had leukemia. That's a hard day. Like that's our first moment meeting, right? And he did a brilliant job bringing trust into the room, receiving our like wild what, like what, like what, and saying the right things at the right time. But he didn't have to prove anything. He was amply prepared to answer anything. And it was just his presence that made me trust him.
You know, the nonverbals are so powerful there, right? And I
Yes,
think that's a lot of what that is.
absolutely. That's like 90%. So we say, I think we're at 94% with the research of nonverbals to verbals, of how much they matter. And
Yeah.
presence, tone, your mannerisms are all about the nonverbals.
Well, we could go on because I love this stuff and I could geek out on it. I think that's why I like talking with you so much. But I want to leave our audience wanting more here.
Sure,
And
sure.
so
It was fun.
how can people get in touch with you, Lindsey, if they do want to learn more?
Absolutely. I've got a website. It's called relationalequipping.com. So it has my number, it has my email, or you can email me at lindsey@relationalequipping.com. I think it's best, shocking, but I think it's best if you call me and we talk about it.
Yeah.
Because then I can understand your needs and what you're looking for. And if I'm the right fit for you, and if I'm not, I'll help you find the right fit. But I think that's the best place to start is give me a call.
Mm. Well, I loved our conversation. We talked about so much about understanding that we're normal, conflict is normal. We talked about having a growth mindset, and
Mhm.
being curious was a big takeaway for me, and helping have strong relationships. But this is such a powerful topic that I'm looking forward to hearing what others have to say, and
Yeah,
interacting with the podcast audience about it. So thank you so much, Lindsey, for joining me here. I think this is a powerful topic for healthcare and leaders in general. And so this kind of advice is just the type of stuff I like to share here on Healthcare Leadership Live. I think it's going to help leaders out there be better and do better and help themselves also help at home. And so that's very powerful for me. So everyone listening, thank you for being here and being an audience member. Please share this show because I think this is content that everyone deserves to have and would enjoy having. And I'm going to continue having more great guests like Lindsey here on Healthcare Leadership Live. So stay tuned for more. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And please reach out to Lindsey or myself if you have any other questions about our content today. And now just go out there and lead with confidence.